Thanks very much, Steve, for that warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the chance to be with you. What a wonderful video with which to start the day. Don't we all aspire to be called the Ace Master, as one of the young lads in that video described? As parents, as teachers, as educators, I think there's no greater ambition than in a sense that that strong, positive endorsement that you have provided such motivation to a young person. And can I pay tribute to Steve Monaghetti and the Australian Sports Commission for their engagement and participation in this conference and commitment to lifting and enhancing sports participation, but their recognition of sports participation as just one vehicle in which we can help to ensure Australia's children be their best, achieve their best and fulfil their potential. Can I too acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and all of Australia's Indigenous peoples. Particularly as Minister for Education and Training, I acknowledge that we continue to learn so much more of Indigenous culture and heritage, from Indigenous culture and heritage, and together as a nation to build upon that culture and heritage. I particularly acknowledge ARACY and the Smith family, the conference hosts here, who do, both of them, exceptional work. ARACY in establishing the Parent Engagement Network, in really building the profile of parent engagement through events such as this. The Smith family, with their contribution in so many ways that the Prime Minister and I were proud just a couple of months ago to acknowledge, to support with enhanced government funding through the Learning for Life program. The various peak parental bodies who are here today, the Australian Parents Council, the Australian Council of State School Organisations who are partnering with government support to refresh the Family Schools Partnership Framework, and to develop materials to support learning at home, educators and parents. Other organisations such as Catholic School Parents Association, who are undertaking research into effective parent engagement practices in primary and secondary schools around Australia. Those who have helped some of you to be here today, such as Good Start and the Ian Potter Foundation, I thank you for enhancing the accessibility of this conference to people who may not have otherwise been able to be here. And particularly can I warmly welcome and acknowledge the many researchers who are participating in these proceedings, who are sharing their learnings and knowledge with all of you. The likes of Dr Heather Weiss, who created the Family Involvement Network of Educators, Jenny Brassington, the founding partner of the Centre for Active Family Engagement, Karen Mapp, who developed the dual capacity building framework for family school partnerships, Dr Debbie Pusher, whose research into parental engagement and leadership is leading, Bill Lucas, looking at how schools can enable parent engagement, and Dr Christy Goodwin, your conference dinner speaker tonight, researching parenting in the digital age. This wide range of organisations and researchers undertaking such targeted work into different features of parental engagement is a testament to the importance of parental engagement. I stand here today not only as the Federal Minister for Education and Training and a representative of the Australian Government, but, like so many of you, as a parent. In my case, a parent of two young girls aged 4 and 6, and also as a son, a grandson, a nephew, a neighbour and a former student. For we all bring with us a legacy of influence from our family networks, the impact of the so-called village that helps to raise and sustain us. Their example, the example of others, their encouragement and interest impressed upon me the value of education and gave me the motivation to make an effort and to seek challenging tasks. It is the example and encouragement of others that provides the resilience to persist, even when the learning is hard, the exams seem daunting, or the hurdles of life present disruption or failure. A part of the village is what gets most of us through, particularly the tough times. Yet sadly we know many children, many students don't fulfil their full potential. And from what many principals and teachers tell me, it seems in parts of our society some of these challenges are getting worse. In too many cases, educators are expected to fill the gap of parental disengagement or disinterest. If this conference is going to have a lasting impact, and if we're going to move from gesture politics to real policy action, then we need to keep the focus on what works and indeed what doesn't. We need to identify the barriers, consider how these can be overcome, and appreciate both the capacities and limits of government action in this area and, of course, the importance of collective societal action in parental engagement. Society must acknowledge that parental and family factors are not just some add-on to student success, but are at the core and centre of it. We've known this for a long time. And track research back to the 1966 US Coleman Report, highlighting the importance of the home environment in affecting education outcomes. The 1989 review of New South Wales schools, chaired by Sir John Carrick, himself a former education minister, got it right when it concluded that, and I quote, "The key to education is motivation at the parent's knee. The parent is the primary teacher. Schools help parents to educate their children." The New South Wales Education Act subsequently reflected this philosophy and clearly stated that the education of a child is primarily the responsibility of the child's parents. It's a principle that has been included in other state education acts. Through their parents, grandparents or carers, children can learn to value education, be motivated and engaged in learning, to be interested in books and reading, and to develop the social and behavioural skills they'll need later in life to flourish both inside and outside of the classroom. We know that parents have the greatest impact on a child's learning. We know that children have the best chance of success when their parents hold high, but reasonable and realistic, expectations of them, and when they provide a home environment that encourages and supports learning. We should not be surprised from this, because after all, approximately 86% of a child's life and time is spent outside of school, mainly at home. More recent research by Professor John Hattie has assigned over 50% of the responsibility for a student's achievement to outside school factors, including students' own abilities, personalities, as well as parental examples, behaviours, expectations and encouragement. Some have misinterpreted this research to suggest that somehow schools, teacher quality and government education and funding policies are less important. They're wrong. Schools, preschools and early learning environments are a critical part of teaching and learning and can also play a critical role in helping parents to play a more effective role in their child's learning. Good teaching is important, critical for students and to help families to educate their children. Sometimes great teaching can even repair or overcome some of the damage done by a home environment of neglect or dysfunction. Schools can, of course, play a big role fostering appropriate behaviours in the classroom between students themselves and with teachers by creating an environment of learning, high expectations, well-being and resilience. However, the odds of student success are at their greatest, at their best, when home and school work hand in glove. The evidence shows that ideally schools and families work together as part of a continuum of learning. Schools can build on the foundations already learnt at home. Children do better when relationships are developed and maintained between home and school, and when the messages children receive are consistent, clear and motivating. Changing social trends, many of which were identified by reports such as the 1985 Carmel Report, and some of which have accelerated since, affected levels of parental responsibility or the extent of engagement with children in schools. These challenges include the growth in single-parent families, the time pressures in dual-income households, entrenched pockets of intergenerational welfare dependency, areas of drug or alcohol addiction, and struggles with mental health problems. Then there are, of course, modern-day mixed blessings of technology and the digital age, which create so many new opportunities, but equally present so many new challenges, especially for parents and educators. I'm sure that for many Australians, the recent research by Murdoch and Griffith universities on the detrimental effect of our children's mobile phone use is having on sleep, mental health and general well-being resonated strongly with people. Workforce changes, societal trends, different family constructs and technology have also changed the way engagement occurs. There is simply less time spent nowadays engaging at community clubs and events, and more time spent connecting by various social media platforms. These trends have variously put new strains on schools and teachers and on parents, as they are at times all expected to fill the gap or to teach around new distractions or intrusions. Schools can make a difference, but their influence has limits in the face of different social, cultural and individual factors, all of which again highlights the importance of helping parents, whatever their circumstances, to give their children the best start in life. With so many outside the school gate factors driving student performance, what is the role of government and government policy? Obviously, once children arrive in an environment of early learning, preschool or school, all governments have a responsibility to ensure that in education terms our systems are as good as they possibly can be. There must be high quality educators and teachers working in schools with strong professional leadership and well-equipped classrooms, teaching a relevant, robust curriculum that wherever possible involves, engages and supports parents in their children's education. Of course, as the federal government neither runs schools nor employs teachers, so many of these matters are in the hands of states, different school systems and individual schools. But as the national government and the single largest contributor to school funding, we do have a key role to play. In addition to many reforms we have led over recent years in areas such as initial teacher education and the national curriculum, we have, through our Quality Schools package announced in last month's budget, provided for record levels of school funding and a model for enduring funding certainty that provides a strong basis for a quality education system. While supporting continued parental choice, we are equally committed to treating all schools and therefore all parents, children and families in government and non-government sectors consistently, fairly. Our new needs-based school funding model is a transparent and fair approach, and further, our funding seeks to ensure that it is tied to further school reforms to boost student results. We will be asking states and territories for greater transparency on spending and outcomes for the benefit of parents, taxpayers, but most importantly, children and students. All of these initiatives mean that parents will have a clearer and more transparent view of what's happening in their children's schooling, so they can amplify the learning in everyday situations and in conversations at home. That's why we're delighted that David Gonski has agreed to do a further report, making particular recommendations on the most effective teaching and learning strategies to reverse declining results and to raise the performance of all schools and all students of all capabilities across Australia. I strongly encourage you, particularly the parent bodies, to participate in this process. We want to hear those views. It'd be remiss of me not to quickly mention the Learning Potential app, which our government launched in 2015, a tool to try to help busy parents with practical assistance on how to engage their children, featuring easy-to-read articles grouped by theme and by age. It's a resource that I know I've used in my household with my daughters, covering topics such as the top tips for years 4 to 6 for starting big school, or school refusal and what it is and how you can help, or learning in the teen brain, or of course at the age range of my girls, the basics of literacy, numeracy and how to integrate that into cooking or gardening or those things that you undertake around the house. Learning Potential app has been recognised internationally, having won the education category of the Best Mobile Government Award, and of course the stall is here for all to be able to discuss that resource. We're also making it easier for parents to get more involved in their preschool age child's learning of languages other than English. And there's no need for busy parents to have to brush up on their rusty high school French or Italian to do so. Our Early Learning Languages program, or ELA, allows children to learn the sounds and language concepts of Mandarin, Japanese, Indonesian, Spanish, Italian, Arabic or French, making the best use of technology in a positive way and providing new resources into preschool settings that actually help children develop these new capabilities. Teachers, schools, childhood educators cannot be expected to do all the heavy lifting in education. Ultimately, parents have a very big responsibility. No matter how busy we all are, how ill-prepared we sometimes feel for the task of parenting, there is, of course, no greater responsibility. That's why all of us engaged in education must ensure the best support is available for families, that they know that it is out there and how to use it. So many of the organisations participating in this event provide that helping hand to those families who need it most. And it's through those types of measures that we can ensure that we have more engaged parents, that although becoming a parent doesn't see you pick up a box that gives you the exact guide, although every circumstance is different, every child is different, every family's construct is different, and all of them come therefore with different challenges, the opportunity is there for us, based on good research, good sound practice and practical measures, to help schools, to help early educators, to help other health and welfare practitioners, to all of them collectively help families to achieve their best. I thank all of you for engaging in what is perhaps one of the most important discussions in education, parental engagement, where the greatest gains can be made, often at the least cost. And I really look forward to hearing some of the outcomes of your deliberations and hopefully having time for one or two quick questions today. Thanks so very much.
I have to put my glasses back on so I can see who's going to be asking a question. Just one or two, because the Minister has some media commitments, but who'd like to go first?
Yep.
This is always the tough bit. It's what I call the penguin moment. You know, penguins sit on the edge of the ice waiting for one to jump in case there's a leopard seal. So who's going to be the brave penguin?
I'm no leopard seal.
Over here. Oh, we've got one there and then one there. There's a travelling mic coming to you.
Could you tell me about the moves the government are making to get family engagement included in pre-service training?
Thanks so much. And we've got a comprehensive process of re-registration, re-accreditation for all initial teacher education programs happening as a part of our initial teacher reforms. And that absolutely is about achieving a range of different things, ensuring that best practice around areas of understanding of parental engagement, feedback loops for children, but also for parents and families are all included, as well as practical measures like ensuring that future primary school teaching graduates all graduate with a subject specialisation so that we get a greater depth of expertise and specialisation into our schools. But it's one of the really important sort of under the radar reforms that's been happening in terms of that process of going back each of the state teacher registration bodies as part of a national framework of reform into each of the universities and re-accrediting each of their programs to ensure that they are up to date.
One over here.
Hi there. I just wondered if you could comment on parents who perhaps don't have the same view as schools and government about what needs to happen in schools and how government might take on their perspectives, like of diverse parents.
It's a very open question there as to, obviously, one of the great things about Australia and our schooling system is that we do provide a very great breadth of choice for parents. And the type of funding model and I only lightly touched on funding because it's not the core focus for a discussion today, but the type of funding model we support, which provides for parents who want to opt out of the government system more support for lower income communities, helps to enable that school choice to be a practical option for more families, not something that is exclusively the domain of those who are more well off. Importantly, schools have to, of course, be at the forefront of that engagement with parents. But also schools need to ensure that they are leading in the education and understanding of parents. That we do expect and should expect schools to take the best research, the best knowledge about how students learn, how to ensure students progress each year, that classic year's worth of learning for a year's worth of study, whatever the starting point of each student, and that schools build that understanding of their approach to that with their parents, that it's a two-way street. And so yes, we empower school choice. Schools ought to listen to and be responsive to the needs, the concerns of their parents, but schools equally should be influencing the thinking of their parents about the appropriate types of learning strategies and approaches that can make the greatest difference for their children in their personal circumstances.
I told you it would happen. Once someone breaks the ice, there's hands everywhere. We'll be able to only take, I think, two more, and please make them quick. One here, one there.
In relation to the app, that's great for a portion of society. What other platforms does the government offer, or are you looking to do for parents who perhaps can't afford a mobile phone, can't afford internet access, or live in areas of Australia, metropolitan and regional? We're from WA, so we experience it widely with lack of access to internet and a whole range of other things. Those often low socio-economic families and those kids who need the help. So what other platforms are the government looking at offering?
There are a range of different approaches, starting of course from the earliest ages. We're undertaking a trial at present across what will be around a dozen locations of a Connected Beginnings program, bringing together health, welfare, education services from the very earliest years. It's built upon a model at a primary school in Perth, the Chalice program, that really is about how do you integrate all of those early years services, particularly targeting families and communities of disadvantage, where they might be reaching out for greater support in certain areas, but where you can make sure that you've got the educational inputs put in alongside that in those early years as part of the preparation for school. Equally, in terms of resources, I'm always at pains to try to encourage people to think about some of the old-fashioned resources that are still available. If you're not a parent who feels confident in reading to your children or engaging in that way, reach out to your local library. And there are good old-fashioned resources there that nowadays, of course, frequently have different programs that are available on the ground for people to attend, where you can sit as part of small groups and learn about those different reading and literacy practices that are so critical in the early years. So I think there are, of course, a whole range of different things. An app is just but one tool, and it can help, as I said, busy parents, but of course it also requires you to be sufficiently engaged in the first place to download it and to take a look at it, which is where, looking at some of the other areas of government service delivery, if we can inject education into those facets as well, it gives you a chance and a scope to focus the minds of parents in those early years that are so critical.
Now, I do apologise, sir, but there's a radio station that's about to melt down, and we're getting the signal that the Minister has to go. So we actually will be really happy to pass on further questions through to the Minister, and there's representatives of his department here that we can maybe try and help you with. But in the meantime, can we all sincerely thank the Minister?
Thank you, everybody.